Great. Good day to everyone around the planet. Welcome to hour one of our Community Day 2023 workshop. And I'm so glad you decided to join us today. My name is Bob Foreman, and with me also working the Q&A room is my colleague and mentor, Richard Taylor. Both of us are ECL instructors for longer than we want to mention, but also we're software engineers and consulting engineers that we work with ECL on a daily basis. So welcome to hour one. Music is Life is the title of this workshop, and this is the first hour of three. So glad you could join us, and without further ado, let's dive right in. So it's been a busy year for HPCC Systems and ECL. We have been traveling again. Yay! We've been traveling to a lot of different schools around the country, and starting in January with a college in Florida, and then we went up to Georgia and then back down to Florida again. And so we've been all over the country promoting code days and hackathons using HPCC Systems and ECL. They have been so successful that we decided this year as a workshop to allow you all to participate in these workshops. So we have three of them. Hour one is, again, like I mentioned in the opening slide, Music is Life. And then tomorrow we'll be looking at Finding Your Paradise. And then finally, on hour number three, we'll be looking at relational data sets for better customer insights. This workshop is probably the simplest of the three. So we wanted to start with the simple workshop first, build up a little bit more tomorrow, and then the third one we'll talk about a lot more advanced tricks and techniques. So this first workshop that we planned, we wanted to pick data sets that were fun to work with. And what better fun than music? I mean, who doesn't like music? Who doesn't like working with music? So we decided to put HPCC and ECL to the test, and not only just provide one music data set to play with, but to provide three from a variety of different sources. So let's take a closer look at this. We're going to be, first of all, presenting these data sets to you. They're already sprayed, already on the cluster, ready to go. And then we're going to be looking at different challenge questions for each data set. And the level of challenge questions gets progressively more challenging. We have a level 1, a level 2, a level 3. So I'm going to be walking you through all three of them. And then we wrap up our workshop with a bonus challenge. So let's set up a few things before we start talking about the actual music data. So here we are, Music is Life. We've got three data sets. The first one, number one, is called the Music Mozilla data set. So I'll get to that in just a minute. The second one, number two, is called the Million Song data set. And the third one, finally, is the Spotify Top 2000. So, by the way, all the links in this presentation will be provided in a file that we'll have attached to the meeting. So you'll be able to then open that file up and grab these links and just jump to these particular websites if you want to follow along. And then later on after the workshop, actually download this data set into your own cluster if you wish. All right, so let's go over to my browser very quickly, and let's take a look at the very first tab here, which is the Music Mozilla. All right, so here we are. Let me scroll up in my browser here a minute. Here we go, Music Moz. All right, so Music Moz I discovered 6 months after I started working at LexisNexis. I was looking for an alternative data set to play with to get to learn ECL. And so searching for music data sets, I found this website called Music Moz or Music Mozilla. It's an open source project. It's contributed, the data set is contributed by volunteers, and its general design was to provide a web interface to a variety of different categories. So you see at the very top here, we have bands and artists. We also have a releases category, music by style, or some people call that genre, alternative rock, blues, classical country, regional music around the world, and then some other boutique categories that I found very interesting, like anti-music. So the anti-music link will take you to a lot of bands that people hate. And so I guess it's the troll world, where, any music, first of all, they spend all this effort and time to create a bunch of websites that they are not happy with particular artists. And I want to know these people that don't like the Beatles. That's all I got to say. So anyway, this is Music Moz, and this file, to get this data, was real simple. You just go into this link at the very top of the page. It takes you to the download page, and if you notice, all of the data is in XML format, extensible markup language. So we'll get into this a little bit more. The second data set that we're going to be working with in this workshop is called the Million Song Data Set. And I like this one. This one has a backstory to it. So once again, if you notice this web page, the news hasn't been updated in quite a while. As a matter of fact, the last news article that was posted was April 25th, 2012. All right, so the music song data set, believe it or not, was the precursor to a lot of the streaming services that you see today. And as a matter of fact, this company, the Echo Nest, was actually bought by, drumroll, Spotify. So in this million song data set, you're going to see a lot of fields and categories that you'll look at and you'll go, that looks familiar to me. And so when Spotify acquired this data set and bought the company, they kind of said, okay, goodbye to this project. Million song data set, there's a million songs, have fun with it, download it, play with it, do whatever you want to do with it. So then, of course, Spotify went, and from a million song data set, now they have billion song data set, and maybe greater than that. But we're going to show you how the birth of streaming music came in. We're going to download this million song data set, work with it in our Music is Life challenge. All right, then the third one was kind of added here. I added this because some of my colleagues were also doing breakout sessions with a music data set. And I said, okay, let's take this and bring it into the fold with the other two. And let's see how it works. Let's see how this data stacks up against the other two data sets. So this one's called the Spotify data set, all-time top 2,000 mega data set. All right, and this is available on Kaggle. So those of you may or may not know about Kaggle. Kaggle is a great source of public data sets, and a lot of them are available free in the public domain, as is this one right here, the Spotify all-time 2000 mega data set. All right, so back over to our slide presentation. Let's see. All right, so the Spotify Top 2000 was actually extracted using Selenium with Python, and they built a CSV file. Now, so these other two data sets right here, number 2 and number 3, are CSV files. So the Music Mozilla data set, as I showed you earlier, was an XML file. So as the workshop coordinator, I had a little bit of work to do for data set number 1 to set it up. But the good news is all of you working with the workshop, the data has already been sprayed. It's already out on our training cluster that you will have access to for the week that we're providing this workshop. So let's go to that next slide. Here's the data sets we're working with, and here is the playing field, the cluster that I'm going to be demonstrating from. This cluster is a cloud cluster that we have ramped up just for this event, and we'll have this cluster ramped up for the entire week. So after this workshop, you can go out, you can go to the repo, grab our code, fork it down to your local machine, start to work with the code, and try some of these challenges that I'm going to be reviewing in the next hour. On the left side here, you see the configuration for those of you comfortable in using VS Code. This is the configuration of pointing with the training cluster. And then on the right side here, we have the ECL IDE configuration. So once again, these slides are available, and this is how you connect. There's the URL that goes directly to the ECL watch. All right. And finally, where's all the code? Where's all the code we're going to be talking about? This is the repo. So the repo is called Entertainment Data. It is a public repository, so you can come out there even after the workshop and download this code as needed. And I'm going to alt-tab back over to my browser right now and actually show you what it looks like in real time. So here is the Entertainment Data repository. Let's go back over there. There it is. And you'll notice on the front page, there is a README file, the code challenge for this very workshop called Music is Life. So we just talked about the Spotify Million Song Dataset and the Music Moz Open Project. There's reference and links to all three of those datasets. And then we have challenge questions. So you'll see here for Music Mozilla, we have a category MM1 and a few tasks that you can do on the dataset. And then you get to level 2, the tasks get a little more involved. And then finally, category 3 is a little more of an advanced challenge. So we have that for the Music Mozilla. We have that for the Million Song Dataset. Scrolling down a little farther, the Spotify challenge questions. And so in this repo, you not only have access to the code, but you also have documentation as to the actual challenge itself. If you notice our repository, you have a folder here called Community Day 2023, and the Community Day subfolder is broken into our 3 hours. We have our Music is Life, which we'll go to right now. Tomorrow we'll go into the other 2. We'll go into those in particular and talk about those in those workshops. So in this workshop, we have on the front of the Hour 1 folder, ECL files that have, once again, the same challenge questions broken down into each individual data set. And also then, after you go through the challenge questions, you want to check your work with the suggested instructor's work. You can go to the solutions folder and take a look at the challenge solutions. So that's what's involved in the workshop. You have your challenges on the front page. Then after you finish your challenge, you can check your work and compare with what we did in the instructor team. I also have another folder called Dev, which I'm going to introduce to you, and we'll talk about that in a minute. This was the extra work I did to get the Music Mozilla dataset ready to roll to be compatible with the other 2 datasets. So that's the first thing that we're going to be looking at together. All right. So that's the repo. There's the link. Again, the link will be in a file that I've attached to this workshop. So you'll be able to just click on that link and go right into the repo, and then you can clone it and download the code as needed. Here we are. And finally, before we dive into the data sets, here's some other resources available. If you're new to ECL or you haven't been working with ECL for a while, you can go out to the HPCC Systems Solutions page and walk through a kind of a web tutorial on the fundamentals of ECL. Also, some useful resources here. Of course, always the most useful resource of ECL is the ECL language reference. In addition, we have the visualizer bundle, and also our standard library PDF, and then finally our machine learning bundle. So these are all links to the appropriate pages and documentation that you can download. And notice we always like to work on the cutting edge of our versions. So you'll see here that we are currently working with version 9.2.4. At the time of this recording, that was the most recent version that we're working with. All right. So remember, during this workshop, you can post questions in the Q&A, and myself and Richard Taylor will be monitoring that, and we'll be able to answer questions along the way. And also, as we finish, we'll have some time. We'll be sticking around to the top of the hour so that if you have any questions after the presentation, you can also, again, chime in and enter your questions in the Q&A forum. Right, so let's break down into our 3 data sets. And again, the first one called Music Mozilla, also affectionately known as Music Moz. All right, so once again, the data that we have for Music Moz has been extracted from an XML file into a CSV format. So the different fields that we have here, I'm going to try the zoom in here. For the first time, let's see if that works. It looks pretty good. We have the artist name. All right. Then we have a unique ID that the Music Moz people were keeping track of. The most important field, the third field in the list here, was called R-type. So I cleaned the data. I pulled out all that extraneous stuff that was in Music Moz, like anti-music and biographies and fan club information and so on. And I just focused on the word release, because that's all we're focusing on is the artist. What album did they release? And then what are the tracks on that album? So each release has a genre, it has a release date, disc number, the track number on the release, the name of the track, how was it released? Was it released in CD, or was it released in just album format, vinyl format, and so on? The record company label, the catalog number, producers of the particular release, a web link to the actual album cover. So that's kind of cool. You could download that, and you can have all kinds of URLs that link to the images of the releases. And then finally, guest musicians, and then general description of the particular release. So I'm going to dive into the challenge questions, but before I do that, I'm going to take you out to my favorite IDE, the ECL IDE. And you'll see I've already attached to my repository for the Music is Life Challenge, and I've already got the repository ready to roll here. And you can see there it is, Hour 1, MIL Music is Life, and we have a dev folder, we have a solutions folder, and then we have our challenge questions. So to start, in the front of this, the very first file I've loaded here is called Browse Input Data. And just to check to make sure that everything looks good, here's the Music Mozilla XML file cleaned up in comma separated comma field value and broken down by the name, the ID, and then the individual tracks of each release. So we've flattened out this data set. There's the track numbers and there's the track titles. All right. For the million song data set, there we have the million song data set. There wasn't a lot to do with this because it came in CSV formats or delimited formats, so it was pretty easy to import and work with million songs. And then finally, the Spotify music data set, which was the top 2,000 tracks that were provided by the Kaggle website. Okay, so this is the input data that we have coming in. Now I want to focus back on the Music Mozilla and how I got to this part right here. The data didn't look like this coming in. Remember, it was in an XML format. So I looked at the XML, found that the tag that kept track of every releases was called category. So I sprayed the XML file onto the cluster, and then this is the raw output of that XML file that I sprayed. So I just have an output of the input data coming in, and you can see the categories here. Remember, I haven't narrowed it down to releases yet. It starts with anti-music, bands and artists, and then the name of the artist. So the name is still in its raw format. And then the item information is in raw XML format. To look at this data better, you can go into the ECL watch of this particular work unit, and now you can see that there is a parent-child relationship here in many cases. For example, InSync has not just one website that doesn't like the band, but it looks like we have here 6 or 7 websites that doesn't like the band. So I wanted to get rid of all this extraneous stuff and then have us settled into just the release information that we can then work with in our workshop. So this is in my developer folder, this file right here. It's called Clean Moz Complete. And this was just kind of a summary of some of the things that I did, getting from the XML format into the clean, delimited format. So the first thing I'll show you is a simple project. We took the first raw input, and I also then was only interested in the child records items that I called in my record structure. And let me back up a little bit here. I'm actually showing you the data itself, but I wanted to show you another thing that took a little bit of work to do. And that is because it was an XML format, you'll see that I needed to add XPath to my field names as the raw data was coming in. So you see here is the original file that I sprayed called Music is Life, input, music moz complete. And so I sprayed that file in there, and I was playing around with a couple of different formats, but actually this was the file that I settled with. And you can see here that the parent record is just 2 fields, the name, and then the child data set, which was called items. Each child record has an item record, and here's where all the meat of the data is contained, including the ID, the release type, title of the track, genre, release date, and so on. And then finally, another nested child data set inside of the child data set that points to the track information. Drilling down to the track row, then I have the disc, if it's a multi-disc release, the number of the track, and then the actual track title. Out of everything I did in this challenge, this probably was the most work involved, to make sure I had the XPath right, to make sure I could read the data in successfully. So from there, I then said, all right, let's go ahead and let's read the raw data in. Let's filter only on releases. I don't care about anti-music or biographies or fan club information. I only want to know the work of the artist. So that is the release category. So I filtered by release only. And then while I did that, I said, let's use some of our standard libraries to parse into that rather raw field back there. Where was that? Right over here, this field right here that had all of this raw data. And let's parse into the second slash, and let's just grab the artist information at the end of this name field. Okay, and so what I did then, by using the find function in our standard function library, looking for the occurrence of the second instance of the slash, and then the second slash that was in there, and then using string slicing to parse the name information. So this allowed me to extract the name information. Let's take a look at that, extract release. And you'll see now that I've got my names of the artists that have been extracted. Now, nothing else. The XML file is still in its raw format. We're still pointing to the child data, but at least I can show you that the names have been standardized properly. So now after that, we look and we say, let's go back. I wrote that out to a file. Then I was testing some filters here, like let's look for the Beatles, for example. So here is an example of filtering on the Beatles. And I got to know also notice the artist name. If they have the name of the artist and the group has the word the in front of it, like the Beatles, the Knack, the Who, and all that, well, they put the after a comma separated value. So clever use of my filter here. I just simply substringed. I knew that the first 7 characters of my filter was going to be the word Beatles. And so that allowed me to pull all of the Beatle tracks. And again, I could go into the ECL watch here and go into my output there for the Beatles. And then you can see all of the releases and all of the track information for each Beatle record. We can scroll down here and look at more if we wanted to do that. The White Album, there we go. Oh, there it is. There's the White Album, my goodness. And all the tracks of the White Album, Back in the USSR, Martha, My Dear. Oh, that's kind of nice. Nice little pop-up there from the ECL watch. All right, so looking good there. And then the only last thing to do then was, how do I flatten this data set into track by track by track by track? Because the million song data set, a million different songs, a million tracks. The Spotify, 2,000 tracks. So how do I go from a parent child into its actually final output? And here's where this is going to be something we're going to talk about in our hour 3 workshop in the relational data sets and better customer insights. There is a rule in ECL that if you are reading on the level of the child record, the parent for that particular child record is always in memory. So what I'm showing you here is I'm drilling back up to the parent name information, then pulling in the appropriate item fields that I want to look at. And this was just an example. Of course, I went ahead and pulled a lot more into this. And by using just this simple output and using my output record format, grabbing the child information plus all of the related parent information for that particular child track, then I was able to easily output this. And well, let's take a look at it. So we go here, this is our track flat. So now you see we have an artist. By the way, this artist 003, some of you may know that artist, some of you may not. I wasn't real familiar with them. So the first time I saw this, I said, is my data bad here? I mean, is there such an artist named 003? So what I did was, of course, pull in my trusty Spotify, and I was able to, it was really kind of cool going through this information to actually read these tracks and refer to these tracks and make sure that, you know, the data looked good and what was actually on my streaming service was matching what I have in my data set. So this was the final output for Music Mozilla, right? So moving on, let's go back over to our slide presentation and let's look at some of the challenge questions then that we posted for the Music Moz. So we have here category 1, which is sort our data set by genre, count total records, and display the first 50. Okay, 1 second here, everybody. Okay. I'm going to just turn my phone off because I do not want to be distracted anymore. So here we go. Okay. So category 1, sort data set by genre, count the total records, display the first 50. Display the first 50 songs by alternative rock genre. How many songs were released by Sting in 1985? How many artists sang the song Yesterday? Anybody remember that song, know what it is? I hope some of you that are younger. Sort the data set by artist and song title, output the first 100, and what song is in the Music Moz data set that has the longest description? Okay, so that was category 1. Category 2, We focus on Coldplay. Almost everybody likes Coldplay. So how many songs in the Music Moz were produced by Coldplay? Count and display all songs where guest musicians appeared in all the songs. Create a new data set that has only track title, title, name, and release date, and so on. And then finally, category 3, a little bit more challenging. Display the number of songs grouped by genre. Display the first 50 and count your total genres. And what artist had the most releases between the year 2001 and 2010? All right, so back over to our ECL IDE. These questions are also provided in this front folder, and you see the questions are in comments, and you could just write your code and insert your code as you go along. All right, but let me show you what it looks like. So we also have the challenge solutions available here. So the very first question was sort genre and count total music data set and display the first 50 records. So we're sorting our Music Moz file, the clean Music Moz file by genre, and then we're displaying using choose-n the first 200 records, and then we're doing a count. And also I added a couple of counts here. I had a count of all genres, and then I have a count of only the genres that are blank, okay? Just to show you a little variation here. So there's the original input of the data coming in the comma delimited format. Here's a sort by genre. And so immediately I see there's some genres here that need further cleaning because the XML, to be honest with you, wasn't clean in many of the fields. So I thought at first I had a little bit of a panic when I saw this genre, sorting by genre, but then if you scroll down a little further into the results, you'll see that the genre does pop up successfully, like a cappella, and we can scroll down a little farther and you'll see. Now, again, this is something that you as a Q&A person or data miner might want to discuss. You want to say, okay, there's 3 genres here for this particular release: a cappella, pop, and folk. So make a decision. Do you want to extract this into another child data set maybe, or maybe a comma delimited list, or maybe leave it as is, and then we use string searching, so when people search for either the word pop or folk or a cappella, then this particular track and release would pop up. So again, that's something for discussion. Now, a lot of genres are clean. A lot of genres are just a single type of genre, like there's a cappella standalone. How many records do we have in Music Mozilla releases? Well, we have 136,510 tracks. It's kind of the middle ground. It's not the biggest data set in our workshop challenge, but it's not the smallest one either. It's right in the middle. So like I said, we have a 1,000,000 song data set, and we have a 2,000 song data set, and Music Moz, after cleaning and sorting by only releases only, we have 136 records that we can work with. And here's blank genres. We actually had tracks. We had 15,415 tracks that had no genre. Okay, filtering by alternative rock. Okay, now there's some things that are starting to come to life here. 30 Seconds to Mars, that's a band that I'm familiar with, and alternative rock genre. How many alternative rock tracks that we have? 2,384. Remember, all the records by Sting in 1985. Okay, there's The Dream of the Blue Turtles, released in 1985, and there were 10 tracks on the album, which we did a count of. How many people recorded the song Yesterday? So we have a group called Bad Religion that recorded Yesterday. We have the Beatles, of course. Then we have Cilla Black and Tom Jones recorded Yesterday. And of course, Elvis had to record Yesterday. So we've got a number of tracks of artists that recorded the song Yesterday. We have 49 people there. All right, here is a sorting of songs by artist and title, and they tell you that NSYNC should have been the first artist by alphabetical order because of the asterisk in front of the name. So that verifies your sort by artist and title. Get maximum description. Well, we found out by using the max function and the length function and the trim function that the longest description that we had in our Music Mozilla data set, and there it is right there, this field right here, is a kind of a narrative of this particular record, and I guess it's the liner notes on it. It was called The Second Decade of Rock and Roll from 1981-1991, the greatest hits of REO Speedwagon. Then we've got Coldplay songs. There they are. So all of you are familiar with Coldplay songs, where this was our level 2. We did a filter on Coldplay and a count of how many Coldplay songs, 63 in the Music Mozilla. How many tracks had guest musicians? 44,588 tracks. And a couple of other things here at the end here. I think the most important one here, let's see, this was the taking the slice of the data that we wanted, just extracting the track information. Once again, this was the crosstab report by genre. So we had 78 a cappella, we had 12 acoustic, and then we had alternative 611, and so on. And there was 1,000 genres in the Music Moz data set, which was kind of interesting, a nice round number there. Okay. And finally, which artist was the most prolific between the year 2001 and 2010? Well, we discover it was Elvis. All right, so Elvis, 1,352 tracks, followed by Slim Whitman. Some of you might know Slim Whitman if you saw that movie Mars Attacks. And to be honest with you, I don't know who Slim Dusty is, so there's a new one on me. And then finally, we got a group that I think some of us recognize. The Beatles had 118 tracks that were released between 2001 and 2010, which is interesting. 311, 84, and so on. Okay, this is in the Music Mozilla. So we come back out to our code itself, and just to spot check some of this information here. Here was all the songs released by Sting in 1985. Let's see, here's all the Yesterday songs, looking for the track title Yesterday. Then we had the maximum description, which was REO Speedwagon, the second decade of rock and roll. We simply take advantage of one of our aggregate functions called max. We do a length and trim of description. We go through the whole data set. We find the maximum value, and then we output our result. In category 2, we focus on Coldplay. So we were just, once again, filtering on all the Coldplay songs. Not a lot to do here, an account of Coldplay songs. And then count all songs where guest musicians appeared. So we were looking for any field where guest musicians was not blank. And we did a count there. And taking a slice of the data, this was just an example showing a project. And then finally, we did some crosstab reports by genre. There's the crosstab report by genre. There is the filter on releases between 2001 and 2010. We have a field called Get Year. Sort and dedupe the tracks. And then we did a crosstab report on the deduped results, giving us, again, Elvis Presley was the flat out winner between the years 2001 and 2010. All right. So that's our first data set, everyone, Music Mozilla. If you have any questions, pop that into the chat window as we go into our next data set, which is the million song data set. I like this one because it had a lot of content. All right, and out of all the data sets, it was actually the largest data set of the 3 because its record structure had a lot more information than the other 2. All right, so it had a unique record ID, the original song ID used by the company Echo Nest, which was then bought by Spotify, the song title, the year the song was released, And most of this information I did get from the actual Million Song Dataset website. They did a lot of machine learning analysis of the track. Well, further analysis, they had a song hotness and an artist hotness in this particular Million Song Dataset. The higher the number, the hotter the song. And the highest number could be 1. The song was lame, it would be a 0. If the artist was hot, it would be a 1. If the artist was lame, it would be 0. Everybody knows what lame means, right? Just not popular. All right, the familiarity of the artist, how many people were searching for that particular artist, okay? For good or for better or for worse. Release name, the location where the song was recorded. You could do stuff with that. How loud was the track? And that one really got my attention. I was so much that it was one of the challenge questions. Show me the loudest tracks in the Million Song Dataset. And what do they mean by loudness? So after I did the filtering on the loudest tracks, then I grabbed my mobile phone and I went out to Spotify and I actually played the tracks, and then I discovered what exactly they were talking about. It's actually a measurement of overmodulation, how loud they made the track, like to the point of even distortion. So that's what we meant when we said loudness in this particular data set. All kinds of stuff that you can play with. What song had the biggest fade in, or what song took the longest to get started? Which song faded out the longest? Tempo, what are the fastest songs in my Million Song data set? Time signature, and so on. And finally, it gets into these things called bars and beats. In a bar, I had to go look this up because I'm not, I play a instrument, but I'm not really like a music scholar. But I had to go look this up. A bar is one segment that holds a number of beats. Multiple beats make up a bar. Multiple bars make up a song. There you go. All right, some of the challenge questions here. You've got a reverse sort your data set by year, count the total number of records and display only the first 50. Reverse sort, interesting. Count the total number of songs released in 2010. How many songs were produced the Million Song data set? Count all songs whose duration is between 200 and 250, and the song hotness is not 0, and its familiarity is greater than 0.9. So that'll give you a subset of songs that are a particular length, particular hotness, and was fairly familiar. All right, and then on the next page here, we've got number 3, which again did some crosstab reports. Display number of songs per year, count total songs released per year. Because this is a million songs, you're going to see some good results in here. So let's go back over to our ECL IDE and let's take a look at the Million Song Dataset Challenge. So once again, sorting songs by descending year. So the most recent song that was released was 2011. By the way, the first one here is just the raw data set output. Raw data set output of the Million Song data set. So here is the descending sort by year. So there was only one song in 2011, and then they, like I said, they terminated the project once the company was sold to Spotify. And then if we do a count, you'll see, ta-da, 1 million songs. There it is, proof. We have 1 million songs in our data set. Songs in 2010. How many songs in 2010? 9,397. What were the songs released by Prince in 1982? There it is. Title. And where's the track information here? Well, that's the track information Delirious LP version. Okay, this is not giving us the song ID, it's just giving us the title of the song. All right, and then total 4 releases in 1982. Who sang Into Temptation? There's the song title, Into Temptation. And in the Million Song Dataset, we actually had 3 different artists singing Into Temptation. Crowded House was the original artist, and then we had people covering that song, Jadis, and then another group called Swimming the Nile. All right, hot songs. All right, there they are, sorted by year. So in 1957, the hottest song was Jingle Bell Rock. In 1958, the hottest song was Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree, and so on. All right, here's our Coldplay data set again, sorting by only Coldplay songs. And how many? Remember, I think, what do we have? 43 in Music Moz. In the Million Song data set, we had 47. So we had about 4 more songs in the Million Song data set that were different from the Music Mozilla. All right, we had Count of Long Familiar, which was songs that were a certain length that had a certain familiarity. I should have output the contents of that, but I just wanted the count being 762. Here was songs that were popular and loud. So they had a good level of popularity and they were loud. So I actually, just to verify that these songs were loud, I went out to Spotify, I looked up this artist, I looked up this song, and I did verify that it was a loud song. Okay. So looking at some of the code that got us to that point, once again, some filtering going on here. There's a filter on Prince in 1982. Here was the song Into Temptation, looking for Into Temptation. Here was a sort by the hotness. Okay, so we had a song hotness. We were looking for the maximum for the year. And then we were sorting by year not equal to 0 to get our maximum hottest song. So the hottest song by year would be the first record in play there. And then, of course, we can go back and do a crosstab report to zero in on that if we wanted to do that. Here's Coldplay and song hotness greater than or equal to 0.75. So to be honest with you, it looks like we didn't filter all the Coldplay songs, only the Coldplay songs that were a certain hot level. All right, so I probably want to go back in there. You can play with this code and take the hotness filter off and see how many all songs of Coldplay were released. Here's that song about duration, or here's that one challenge where duration between 200 and 250, song hotness was not blank, and familiarity was greater than 0.9. And then challenge number 3, as we get to category 3, you'll see we've got crosstab reports going on here. And we're building, first of all, we're building kind of a small table here of only looking for song hotness greater than 0.5 and loudness greater than 0. And then we were filtering on those 2 Boolean values. And here's the crosstab report by total number of songs by year. So how many songs per year? Let's see, that was called Count Year Table. 89, and then the songs. So in 2007, 39 songs were released. 2006, 37 songs were released. And this is, remember, the Million Song data set. So it looks like the majority of songs were released in between the year 2000 and 2007, and then 2010 down here, and the 80s, and so on and so on. So again, we broke it down by year and how many songs were released in that particular year. All right, everyone. So we're down the home stretch now. Our last data set was Spotify 2000. Once again, this was a very simple data set. It's had title, artist, genre, year of release, beats per minute. So you notice it borrowed something from the Million Song data set. The energy of the song, the higher the value, the more energetic the song was deemed to be. The higher the danceability value, the easier it is to dance to the song. I wonder how they measured that. Loudness, the higher the value, the louder the song, and so on. So there's some interesting fields in here that you could draw on and use to analyze. And so some of the challenge questions are pretty similar to what we did in the other two data sets. Who sang Into Temptation? What songs were produced by Prince in 1984? Garage rock. Coldplay again. Come on, Coldplay, let's see you again. What's the correlation between popularity and liveness? And what's the correlation between loudness and energy? And then finally, we had some crosstab reports going here. We had a table of Boolean is popular. That was the song Funky. We had a new column called Funkiness, which is a combination of loudness and danceability. If it's a good danceable song and it's loud, we call it funky. We measured something, created a new field called funkiness. Okay. And then finally, I'm going to go back. I'm going to show you in the IDE. We had a bonus challenge that said, all right, now you've had fun with all three of these data sets. Let's go ahead and combine them all together. So there's a bonus one here, just pulling in the song title, the album title, the artist, and the release year, and then uniquely sequence each one of the records. All right. So the Spotify challenge, once again, a lot more of the same type of filtering. You've got sort by top genre. All right. And so we have a descending genre in here: acid jazz, acoustic pop, adult standards. Count 1994. So we have 6 records that had no genre, I guess. Here's garage rock. There's four songs out of the 2000 that had a garage rock genre. Only 4 records there. Prince songs, there were 4 Prince songs. Into Temptation in the 2001, there's Crowded House. Remember, the other 2 that were in the million song data set were excluded from this top 2000. Where's that funkiness one at the end here? So there's funkiness. So there's a song called Sunrise that it had a funky level of 39. There's a song called Clint Eastwood that had a funky level of 57. Here's one called Without Me that was 88. I probably should have added the artist to this, but I was just was challenging them to create a new field that was combining 2 other fields together. I think I'll probably revise this in the next breakout to include the artist name. All right, and the last one, the bonus challenge, this was, I think, the most fun for me, was, again, you have in the Music Mozilla 136 tracks. The million song data set, of course, 1 million tracks, and the Spotify Music had 2,000 tracks. So let's combine all 3 of them together. And the one way I chose that was also to, since each data set had a different way of dealing with the year, I wanted to just project and clean it. I only wanted songs that had a valid title. And so I built a project of slim million song data set. Then I built a project of Spotify Music called Spot Ad. And then I created a third project that was working with the Music Mozilla. And then, well, come on. Here we are. So after I projected the third one, then I said my final data set is just a combination of all 3. Just to make sure that everything is good, I sort by song title and artist, and then I do a dedupe by song title and artist. And then I cleaned it up a little bit more. There was a couple of titles that had some junk in there that I cleaned out. And finally, I got my output here. My first output was the final result of my merging of all 3, a count of all 3. We have a little over 1 million records. So I did add value to it. We added 10,083 new songs that weren't in the original million song data set. And then finally, just to wrap it up, I filtered on my favorite artist, David Bowie, one of my favorite artists, rest in peace, and just to see how many tracks were coming out and the releases and so on. All right, so that brings us to the wrap up of our workshop. I hope that I've given you a nice journey through the world of music. I hope that this inspires you to work with this data, to filter on a little bit more, and reach out to me via email. There is Wally the Wonder Dog, who also loves to listen to music. There's my email at the top, and there is Richard Taylor's email, who has been, thank you, Richard, for helping with the Q&A and answering the questions. And I hope you enjoyed hour number 1. Thank you once again for attending, and we'll see you tomorrow for hour number 2, which is called Find Your Paradise. So thanks. Thanks for spending an hour with me. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you tomorrow. Thank you.